We should all think about building smart goals. I want to become the best athlete or the best swimmer. Who else?
No, that I want to be a model.
Oh.
That's not an attainable goal. You know why?
Well, you can become a model though.
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
The quick wins are those tasks which require less effort, but the impact is a lot higher.
So time management is about managing time, but also managing some of the bad habits we inculcate within ourselves.
That's true. Procrastination. You've probably heard of that.
I'm totally guilty of that.
It's actually a mental illness.
Yeah.
Most meetings, in my opinion, can happen in 15 minutes. It should be very productive.
Actually, a few companies have started doing that, Adnan.
People will try to steal your time as much as they can, right? So setting that right expectation upfront
is really important.
So the way I do this, like my calendar, it's blocked for 2 hours. Like everyone knows, I'm not going to talk.
And you just told people in a very subtle way that you're not going to be a doormat.
High performers also have exactly the same amount of time, but then they are more productive and they are able to create massive impact.
There is a common thing that we all feel like there is 24 hours in a day are not enough. You hear that a lot of times. I don't get time to spend on myself. I am not able to accomplish all the tasks there are. I don't have time to meditate. This is a very, very common, I wouldn't say excuse, but definitely a very common response we hear from people. So if you haven't guessed yet, we're going to talk today about
time management.
Yes.
So time management is not just about like the personal, like at work, right? People get into a lot of issues around, I have too many tasks, I never get anything done.
Correct.
I have some priority or critical deliverable, but I'm not able to get those done because there's
even
more coming up.
Even at work, people say, oh, I can't get this to you because I don't have enough time.
That's correct.
A lot of times, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
But then there is another thing. I've always thought about this, that high performers also have exactly the same amount of time.
Correct.
But then they are more productive and they are able to create massive impact.
Yes.
So how do they do it?
One of the things that they do, and you and I always talk about this, is they wake up early. They utilize the prime hours of the day, right? But we want to talk a little bit about it in more structure as we see people facing every day. So let's just go in the flow.
Yeah, so I've tried that too. I was able to be a lot more productive.
Yeah.
So one example is when I do same things early morning.
Yeah.
I was able to do it a lot faster versus the same task done later in the day.
Yes.
Right? So that's how I felt like, your productivity goes up. So I'll talk about, what I've done, and how I've been managing my time or calendar during the day. For the time management, the most important thing that you think about is your goals.
Your daily goals or your life goals? What are we talking about?
So there could be short-term goals and the long-term goals, right?
Okay,
so the
fair.
long-term goals and everything should be like in alignment.
Yeah.
But the goals are very important. A lot of people spend their lives on day-to-day.
Yes.
Right? They get on a job, there is a specific task or a specific job function that they do.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a priority or a goal setting early on, then there could be a lot of distraction. Right?
Correct.
So the goal setting and then measuring those goals is going to keep you motivated on the short term.
Yes, because it gives you a sense of accomplishment. Believe it or not, it doesn't matter what age we are, but the minute we cross an item off of a list, we suddenly feel a lot more accomplished, right? I have a good friend who once told me, he was telling me why he keeps a list of daily activities every day. And I was just asking, okay, other than the fact that it gives you a little more structure in the day, is there something else? And he said, yeah, because every time I scratch something off that list, I feel a little more accomplished.
Exactly.
And you know what? There's a point in that.
Exactly. So that's a beautiful point, because what happens is a lot of people think that, I have this crazy or that big goal. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
As long as you split that goal into smaller pieces, smaller tasks, and then when you accomplish them, that's going to give you that energy to keep going.
And it makes it achievable, right? Otherwise, we make a mountain out of a mole. But if you put some structure, you create just bite-sized, right-sized pieces for you to accomplish and feel good about yourself.
Exactly right. So we should all think about building smart goals. right?
Beautiful. I like that.
So smart here is that it should be special. Your goal should have some relevancy to your objectives in life.
Let's say it again. To you.
To you. So
Right?
that's a great way to put it.
Right.
To you. The most important thing, it should be special. It should be aligned to your personal goals.
Yes.
Your workplace goal. It should
Yes.
be. It should have that
Indeed.
alignment.
I believe in that.
So you should list down, what your goals are. It could be something like, I want to become a CEO. Like you probably have that.
I
goal.
had that goal.
You
right?
have that goal that
And
one day I want to become a CEO.
I checked the box on that, became a CEO. But it didn't just happen overnight, okay? As much as contrary to popular belief, people would believe, wow, she never talked about it. Yeah, because you're not essentially supposed to talk about your goals.
Yeah.
They're for you.
That's exactly right.
So you're feeding those goals. Now, nobody else needs to. It's nobody's business to know about them. You can keep them to yourself. As long as you have a logic to that magic, it'll happen to you.
That's correct. That's a great way to put it. So it always starts with setting those goals, right? So S needs to be special. The next one is it needs to be measurable. So create goals that you should be able to measure, right? It should have some kind of quantitative aspect or some type of qualitative aspect that you
Beautiful.
can measure,
Yes.
right? So that's a very important point.
Yeah.
If the goals are not measurable, then you will never be able to see the progress
Yes.
on those, right? So goals should be measurable.
It's a shifting delta.
It's a moving target at that
Yes.
point.
Yeah.
The next thing is it should be attainable. So you should not create things like which
Oh,
you
this
think
one
are
is
not
really
practical.
true.
Attainable, like I want to become the best athlete or the best swimmer. Who else?
That I want to be a model.
Oh.
That's not an attainable goal. You know why?
Well, you can become a model, though.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. But you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like there is a trajectory in your life, right? For me, that trajectory was to be a CEO, and it was aligned with where I was taking my professional life, and it was a right goal to set. Now, the same goal set, if I say I want to be an actress or a model, I have done nothing to actually do that or achieve that goal throughout my life. So even if another person's optic, like Adnan's optic is, hey, you can be a model, what have I done to actually make it possible for myself?
That's correct. So the way I think about this is everyone should do a SWAT analysis. So SWAT is, strength, weakness, opportunity, threat, right? That's a quick analysis on yourself.
Lovely.
Because you have to think about what your strengths are.
Yeah.
Everyone is born with a specific set of talents.
Yes.
You should always think about building upon those talents.
Yeah.
Right? There are some people who are very brainy. There are some people who are physically very strong.
Yes.
So those are that natural talent, those gifted talent that people have. Right? So you should think about building those.
Absolutely.
So your goals and your ambition should be aligned to those as well.
Yeah.
Only then you can set that these could be attainable.
This
right?
is powerful.
Like
SMART and then SWAT, right?
Yes, SWAT.
SMART is the way to actually manage your time, but SWAT is a self-reflection to make sure that your goals that you're setting are attainable or achievable.
And then the fourth one is rewarding. So your goal should be rewarding. If there is no reward attached to your goals, then your motivation is going to go down.
No brownie points.
No brownie is something, right? So you should also think about your goals should have some kind of reward mechanism.
Yes.
And if they are not rewards available right away, you should think about giving rewards to yourself.
Yes.
So I have accomplished a specific task. Today is my night out. I'm gonna, even though
But
I am.
What do you do? How do you reward yourself?
I reward myself that, I try to eat very healthy. My wife makes sure that I eat very healthy, but then I have a cheat day. So when I accomplish something, I'm gonna have a cheat day.
This is funny. It reminds me of my 14-year-old who also does that. So I'm sometimes motivated as I see his motivation, and he'd be like, oh, it's not my sugar day. I can't eat sugar. So it doesn't matter where we are, what dessert it is, he's just not going to touch it. And
so you have to reward yourself.
Yes,
right?
you have
Some
to.
way you have to think about rewarding yourself. And then the last one is it should be time bound, which is the most important one. Like, you should not have goals that have infinite timelines.
because they're never going to happen.
They're never going to happen. So you
Yes.
should always have that and be be able to track that, right?
Yeah.
So it should be time bound, right?
Yeah.
I want to become a CEO in next 5 years,
Yeah.
right? Or something like that. You should create.
Now that CEO example, it was time bound. So I had a lot of people in my professional inner circle that, including you actually, that knew that at some point I was going to venture out and be a CEO again. And I'd put a target. I'd put a target that in 5 years, I'm going to start my own thing. You know, there was more things to that, but there was an aligned timeline. And believe it or not, I actually did it in 3.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So
Because
that
I didn't
journey,
feel the need to wait longer because the preparedness helped.
yeah. So that's a great example,
Yeah.
right? So you can actually shrink your timelines of your goal
Yeah.
if you do those steps in the right order.
Yes.
Right? So let's talk about what those steps are, how you do it, right? So you set your goals. That's the first thing. The second thing is prioritization.
Yes.
So when you get to something, you will have many tasks that's going to come out, right? If you start to chalk down all the pieces in there, right? Then you have to think about, okay, which one should I attack first? That's where the prioritization come in. So that brings me to this other chart that you should think about how you should qualify and focus on
Lovely.
your task. So if you look at this chart, there are some quick wins in here. And this is a very interesting example where the quick wins are those tasks which require less effort, but the impact is a lot higher.
Yes.
And there are certain tasks or goals which require a lot of effort and require a lot of time as well. Those are good, but your focus should be those quick wins first, because if you just continue to do that or allocate all your resources into that one,
The
then you will
agile
be taking that out.
methodology.
Yes, the
of
agile and
goals.
in terms of how you should prioritize.
Yes.
You should prioritize. That prioritization is extremely important.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at, there are a few fill-ins. What these fill-ins are, which most of us fall into. This is a trap where you get into a lot of meaningless tasks,
Yeah.
right? Low effort. And we try to do that. Those are sometimes good because you have to support other things. Like I'll use one example. I hate doing expense reports.
But you have to do
But
that.
you have to do a certain.
Necessary demons.
These are necessary demons,
Yes.
in the organization that you have to deal with.
Yes.
So try to see, how you can delegate.
Yeah.
I try to use my less productive time for doing some of those.
Yeah,
right?
like it's not going to be in the core hours of your morning productivity.
Yeah.
It's going to be towards the tail end of your day when you're like, I'm falling off of this chair because I'm so sleepy.
Or I am with my, like in front of the TV where I'm trying to do some multitasking.
Yes, that's true.
You
That
know?
helps too. Actually, I'm guilty of that. I always did my expense reports on my phone when I was watching TV because it was like, oh, what a redundant task.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, no. So that
And
is all
then
good.
look at the last one.
Yeah.
The last one is the thankless one. You should completely stay away from those because they take a lot of time, but the reward is extremely low. That's why a lot of people come out and take away your time, right? So I would try to avoid a lot of those tasks,
Yes.
right?
And
So-
sometimes it's a lot of those people too. Sometimes we have people in our lives, they just want to come in and kill their time at their convenience with their availability. And, don't let them suck your time because your time is important to you. And if you've allocated that to do something important for you, please do it because then if it's I'm not saying don't socialize. I'm just saying don't let people suck your time away from you.
Yes, just
Yeah.
be cognizant
Yes.
of the fact that your time is extremely valuable. right?
Certainly. It's funny when you said those tasks that take a lot of effort and the results are very iffy. I immediately thought for people in the industry who know what RFPs are, when you respond to an
no.
RFP, it's a task that sucks up all your time. But if you are not aligned with that mission or organization's goals, you don't know the customer, you don't understand what they're doing, but you just think it's a good RFP to respond to. I always tell my team, don't respond to stuff like that because you're going to add zero value. You're going to be a checkbox item that, you just responded. So just same thing applies, I guess, too.
Yeah, no, completely agree.
Yeah.
All right, so now let's move to the third thing.
Yes, sir.
So you have prioritized it. You have started with the goals. You prioritize it. Next thing is how you're going to monitor. So that's where the schedule comes in. right? You need to start
like how do you
scheduling those
manage?
tasks.
Yeah.
How are you going to manage those?
Yeah.
And the way to do that is start assigning. I'll do this task at this time, this date. If there's a daily task, you should have like a structure created around it, like
Yeah.
when you're going to do it.
Yeah.
The extremely important tasks should be done during the first few hours of the day where you're most fresh.
Yes.
And your mind works at full capacity or fully caffeinated, like most of us are.
Not just even caffeinated, when the outside noise is limited.
Yeah, that's a good point.
My goal whether it's as a CEO or as a professional. I like those core hours for my things. So a lot of times I had bosses that kept meetings at 8 a.m. And even now with my team, I'm like, the first meeting has to be at 9 or 10 a.m. And there's a reason for that. Those core hours are for things that are extremely important to me. And in that extremely important is having breakfast with my family. That is extremely important to me. And then right after that, I like to sit down and like this morning I was flying in and you were like, you're sending a lot of emails, right? Emails are flying from the air. And it's because those are the core hours of my morning. I like to fly early in the morning just so I can get a lot of stuff done. If I have to attend a board meeting, I'm going to make sure that I absorb the board material in those core hours. So similarly for you, I think you do the crux of your work.
I do the same thing. What I've done is I've blocked like the first 2 hours.
Yeah.
So 9 to 11 is like completely blocked. That's my focus time.
9 to 11.
9 to
Wow.
11. First 2 hours, I just don't do any meetings.
Have you done this all your life?
No, the site recently started doing
I love that.
And I am so happy because then those 2 hours I'm so productive.
Yeah.
Like I do like most of my thinking, my work that I have planned.
Yeah.
I'm able to do those in 2 hours, and then my entire day I'm fine talking to people.
I'm going to pose a question to you. Are you the kind of person that when you're at the dinner table, you're talking work?
Dinner table, I try not to. I actually do not talk work at all.
Me too. I do not talk work at all. If you get nothing out of this video, I'd say take this. Because when you start talking work at home during your personal hours with your family or with yourself, you are just playing with your mind. You're telling yourself that you shut down that chapter to do something else, but you're really just continuing it, and it's going to create stress. So time management is about managing time, but also managing some of the bad habits we inculcate within ourselves.
That's true. That's right. So if you look at the research that was done about all the successful leaders,
Yeah.
How their daily lives have been. Most
Yeah.
I've seen, dedicate a lot of their time to their families. What is
Yes.
important? So there are CEOs who would cook breakfast every day.
Yes.
Right? They're just so busy, but they would cook breakfast. They would make sure they had dinner with the family. They make sure if there is a kids soccer game out there, they would go and they're present.
Yeah.
Right? So there was an interesting example, like one of the large companies that I've worked with, like the CEO there, like he would go and attend all his kids' basketball games and soccer. And there are people that are way down in the food chain, they'll be so busy, we're not going to do that. And they're constantly focusing on their work.
But a lot of people, Adnan, will even make excuses, right? We cover up our errors really well. And sometimes you'd be like, oh, because he's a CEO, he can do that. No, it's hard.
It's not.
Allocating time, whether you're CEO or you're key leader or you are a homemaker, it doesn't matter. You still have to allocate time.
And prioritize.
Yes.
So that's very important. So that gets into another area that I want to talk about, procrastination. You've probably heard of that.
I'm totally guilty of that, by the way.
I've been too, until I saw a research where a doctor came out and he said, it's actually a mental illness. Let's suppose there is a task which takes 2 hours and you have 5 days to meet. I will do this, on the fourth day. I'll do this.
Yes.
So what happens is, you do it, but then you are using that time with other non-productive stuff, right? A lot of times that happens is, sometimes people start doing something, they're like, oh, I'm going to come out and go get a coffee. Or, I will do it. They're not they're not in the mood. He said,
Yeah.
I'll do it later. I'm not in the
Yes.
mood right now,
Yeah.
or something like that. So
Yeah.
those things should be avoided. I know you have a different view. We talked about it.
I do have a different view on this. So for me, and I think a lot of creative writer kind of people would agree with my approach. So if you give me a task 5 days ago and you tell me you have to do it today, I will do it. It's not going to be my best product. Because guess what my brain knows? Brains are smart. Like, hey, I got another 4 days. I'm going to improvise on this.
That's
in
a
those 4
good point.
days, right? Whereas, if I do this on day 4, those 4 hours that I would have spent in the previous 5 days can be saved to do something that
So as long as you use that time well,
Yeah.
which not everyone can
but
do.
if you're that person, don't feel guilty about it. I say, people look at procrastination as a negative. I sometimes interview people, and I ask this trick question. So if you're ever interviewed by me, I'll be like, "Are you a procrastinator?" Because I am one. And if someone is really a procrastinator and knows how to use it, I want to hear their answer because I care about that creativity. So hey, by the way, if you're a procrastinator and whatever we're talking about, whatever we've talked about in the last few minutes, please leave us some comments because we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, exactly. Because I sort of switched from being one into the other one, which has started to help, but it's not easy, I can tell you.
To each their own, right?
Yeah. So as long as you can manage, there's something to be mindful of.
Yes.
The other thing I want to talk about is interruptions. So
Yes.
most of the time in your work, right, when you're trying to focus on something, you'll get interrupted.
100%.
This happens a lot. And these days, there are so many channels to be interrupted. You have phones, you have text messages, you have workplace chats, right, that you were doing. So it's not just emails anymore,
Yes.
right? But there is that expectation that somebody ping you, right? You should be able to respond right away, right? So the way to handle this is, again, people will try to steal your time as much as they can, right? So setting that right expectation up front
is really important.
So the way I do this, like my calendar, it's blocked for 2 hours. Like everyone knows, I'm not going to talk. Even if they try to override, I have this
You will not accept that meeting.
I have a very strict rule that they have to explain to me why they need this meeting at this time and why it cannot happen after 11.
I love that. I really respect what he just said. Because in corporate America, at least, I don't know about the other countries, there's a formality that if someone puts something on your calendar, you're politely supposed to accept it. So the fact that you actually push back and say, hey, why? It's really good.
Yeah. So that has actually helped me, and that set the right expectation.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't see any issues. So everyone now knows, right? After a little while, everyone start to realize, and then if they are trying to book my time because there is a customer availability issue or something that cannot happen,
and
then
you
they
just
would
told
politely
people
answer.
in a very subtle way that you're not going to be a doormat.
Maybe, yeah.
Yes. It's a very subtle and polished way to tell somebody, I've blocked that time, respect me.
That's correct. Respect that time.
Yes.
So that actually helps. And then the last thing I want to talk about is everyone should think about how they should run meetings, because meeting is the biggest time suck out there, right? Most meetings, people, block it for an hour or 30 minutes. Anytime, I had a rule, nobody's going to block an hour-long meeting in my calendar.
Yeah.
Unless they have a very specific reason to.
Yeah.
Most meetings, in my opinion, can happen in 15 minutes. It should be very directed.
Actually, a few companies have started doing that, Adnan. 15 minutes are sufficient because if you look at it, most calls that you and I or anybody else joins, the first 10 minutes, people are talking football or something else, right?
Or how their weekend was.
How their weekend was, how their last vacation was, where are they going on vacation, where are they coming from. I'm not saying personal conversation is not necessary. All I'm saying is it doesn't need to take 10 minutes of your day because those critical 10 minutes of your day are important to you.
It may not be important for one person, but on the other people, right? It could be important. Someone may be has a strict timeline and they need that time. So the way the meeting should be structured, it should have an agenda. It should be like, the expectation should be set that, can we do this faster? Even before 30 minutes, so we can just give some time back to everyone.
Yes.
And then it should be, the items that couldn't be discussed in that meeting, could be parked, right? There could be another one. So somebody has to manage that whole process. So on the link below, I've shared a very interesting article on 7 things for effective meetings. Take a look at that. It should be something you should keep in mind on how to run effective meetings.
Absolutely. But I hope you found this session necessary and useful. And we love to hear from you. If you have been following and tracking most of our shows, give us some comments. We love to engage with you. We love to understand what you'd like us to cover next, because there's so many different things out there. So thank you, and manage your time perfectly and give yourself some grace. Be well.
Thank you.